Good evening. This is the General Purposes Committee. I'll ask people to introduce themselves. Councillor Yvonne Johnson, Chair for the evening.
Councillor Anthony Young.
Good evening all, I'm Councillor Kenmore Baines.
Councillor Yoel Gordon.
Councillor Ian Kingston.
Jess Murray, I'm the Assistant Director for Safer Communities and Resident Services at Ealing Council.
Good evening, Isabella Gregory, Regulatory Services Operations Manager.
Okay. Councillor Young said, why had we not met before? Because there was no business. That was basically why, which is fair enough. Can I sign the minutes of the meeting on the 24th of November 2021? I know none of us were there, but Keith tells me it's all true and correct record. So if I could sign those, thank you. And then that brings us on to item 6, which I imagine that one of you is going to introduce.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. Tonight we're going to present the progress report in terms of the work programme for the health and safety and food safety teams. We will recall, I'm not sure you were all on the committee last year, but in effect, in response to the COVID pandemic and the kind of response around that, and the fact that services responsible for the delivery of the food inspections as well as health and safety work plan were obviously redeployed to do a lot of COVID work. We moved to a 2-year reporting program around food safety, and some of that was in response to the pandemic and how that affected the food trade, but also how it affected the food service in terms of delivering their functions. So tonight we have an update on that 2-year plan, which was introduced last year, to give you guys some feedback in terms of how we've performed, what the challenges are, and kind of the direction of travel for that service. And separate to that, we have the health and safety work plan, which is agreed each year. That was only a 1-year plan agreed last year. So this is a new plan for 22-23, the current year that we're in, to detail the work of the service and what we're focusing on and delivering. So for the most part, I'm going to hand over to Isabella to talk through the work program and the work we've been doing, and take you through the key aspects of the report. Obviously, happy to take questions as we move through the report, and will be at your discretion, Chair.
Thank you. Off you go then.
Perfect. Thank you. So as I said, my name is Isabella Gregory and I oversee the work of the regulatory services. And I'm here to give you an update on the progress against the food service plan, and also present to you the new health and safety service plan for this financial year. So you've been provided with General Purposes Committee report, and this report asks you to note the legal framework within which this local authority operates, note the extent of implementation of the current food service plan and associated risks, endorse the service response and action plan to mitigate these risks, note the additional resource allocation made available to the service, and also note and approve the new health and safety service plan for this year. To give you an idea of the scope of work of the food and workplace safety team, we have about 20,000 businesses in Ealing, and out of those 20,000, we have about 4,000 food premises. These premises range from shops, restaurants, home caterers, producers, manufacturers, and many others. We also have about 80 importers and exporters, which create a steady flow of import work, and over 300 food manufacturers. We also have more than 4 times the average for London number of what is referred to as approved food establishments. These food businesses are essentially higher risk food manufacturers, making Ealing a very unique and complex local authority to regulate. The team consists currently of 3 team leaders and has 9 full-time equivalent officers, as well as 3 environmental health graduates and 2 administrative support staff. Whilst there are separate staffing allocations for both teams, due to the complexity of the work, some of the officers are authorised to carry out both food and health and safety work, and therefore, depending on the service needs, respond accordingly. The food service plan describes to you how the council's statutory duties as a food authority under the Food Safety Act will be discharged. And the team carries out a range of proactive and reactive work, and the council's ability to discharge its functions is closely monitored by the FSA, the Food Standards Agency. A significant proportion of the team's time is taken up by carrying out unannounced food hygiene interventions of all food businesses in Ealing. The frequency of those inspections ranges from 6 months to 3 years, and is based on the level of risk and compliance with the food safety requirements. In addition to this, the team responds to a large number of complaints and provides a variety of other services, such as sampling, providing advice to complex inquiries, and food poisoning outbreak investigations. The workplace safety team, similar to the food safety, delivers a range of proactive and reactive work. The enforcement of health and safety laws in the UK is actually split between local authorities and the Health and Safety Executive. The HSE, as is known, also is responsible for issuing guidance and advice to us on what constitute adequate health and safety arrangements. Following the Regulation Act in 2015, the proactive scope of the health and safety team has been significantly reduced, and therefore the team focuses mainly on reactive work, which includes accident and complaint investigations. However, in addition to it, each year, in accordance with the HSE guidance, the team selects a range of premises to carry out proactive interventions.
I think it'd be better. I should imagine most people have read through the report. Perhaps we could ask questions, because I think that might be better. So
I would like to probably would be another 8 minutes, and I would like to share a clip.
I don't think you need to read through because we've read it. So perhaps if we could perhaps ask questions on some of this. I think before I came out, the news tonight said that London has a lot more outlets for food, and I think we all know that because the high streets have changed and so on. So you want to just talk about this graph, do you? If you do the graph, and then we'll ask questions.
Yeah, I've got probably about another 10 minutes.
I think
of the-
Oh, no, we don't want 10 minutes if you read
If we
the
just
report.
go through maybe the performance, because that will give you a flavour of the challenge, I suppose, and just give you a little bit of context and scope, and then happy to kind of work through the questions. And then if there's anything that we don't think we covered that we need to in the context of the report and the approval we need, of course. No.
That's okay. Yeah, if you're happy with that. So just go through this slide. So this slide, again, as it's been provided in the report, it just shows you how many interventions we did. So we've done about 700 food hygiene inspections. So we will have to do about 1,700 for the year as it was provided in the report. I can just summarize the presentation if you want me to. If you want me to do it. Okay, perfect. So you've been provided obviously with the overview of the workplace safety teams. Again, I'm happy to take some questions on it. But essentially in the past year, we haven't done very much health and safety work due to absence of officers. However, this year we are on track to deliver the program, so there's no issue there. And there is a short clip that I was hoping to play to you if you want to see it. And it's actually from the ITV News in April about the work of our officers. So I'm not sure whether would you like me to share that? It's about 2 minutes. Okay.
Our research shows that Britain's environmental health.
This one here is on. There's another one that's on. I'm not sure what. So hopefully you can hear it.
Shows that Britain's environmental health officers are facing an unprecedented challenge as outlets reopen from pandemic. They've been given special access, but here's a warning. What they find may get your appetite.
Filthy premises, so not doing any cleaning at all.
First up, Ealing, West London, and a stomach-churning trail of evidence.
There's black mold, it's all over here. There's obviously a level of pest activity in here at some stage, and it hasn't been cleaned.
Mouse droppings on serving plates is bad enough, but what they find next shocked even these seasoned professionals.
It's just like a bit of a mouse tail. Okay, but you can see that's the tail of a mouse.
Yes, you heard it right. A mouse's tail stuck to this pest control adhesive. If you thought things couldn't get any worse in this restaurant, think again.
I believe it is a dead mouse, but it looks to be there for quite a while.
What we've seen you doing just now really highlights how important these inspections are in terms of protecting the public. Yeah, there's a big backlog now, isn't there?
Unfortunately, due to COVID, there is that serious backlog, and we are working through the inspections and in line with the Food Standards Agency, kind of getting back into a food inspection.
Next, a restaurant that's such a danger to public health, it can't be allowed to stay open.
So this cockroach trap was found under one of the front service fridges. I'd say there's at least 100 cockroaches between adult and nymph cockroaches on there.
I don't know what that bug is. It looks a bit like a cockroach. It's under active cockroach infestation throughout the premises. There was like dead ones across the areas, fridges, freezers, things like that. So unfortunately, we actually made the decision to close that business today because the imminent risk it poses to public health.
Thank you. So I'll just go very quickly through this. So you've been again provided that within the report. Just to summarize, this year we're only focusing on the food hygiene interventions in line with the FSA's recovery plan. That doesn't include all of the premises that we have to inspect. It is expected that out of the 1,700 premises, without any additional expenditure, we'll be only able to complete 1,200. So, and just to give you an idea of the food compliance in Ealing, we are currently in the top 5 of the worst areas in the UK. And we have had extensively reported certain of our premises which are not performing very well. To date, however, we've been able to show extensive enforcement, and this is why the service requires investment, A, to be able to meet the inspection program, and B, to be able to maintain the current enforcement strategy. We provided the report, which summarizes to you the kind of the reasons behind it, and I won't go into it again. But just to summarize, the strategic director agreed an overspend of £150,000. We'll be able to hopefully engage 5 extra contractors to have cleared the backlog. And there's also a plan for the future, which looks at the overall resourcing of the food safety team. Thank you very much. And I'll be happy to take some questions.
Would you, any questions over there? Really, basically, you're saying that you need more officers to do more work. And at the number of officers you've got at the moment, you can just about do what you have to do. Is that correct? But you're taking on 5 extra?
So we cannot do what we have to do. At the moment, we are only focusing on the highest risk premises. As I said, we have about 4,000 premises in Ealing. We are not able to do all of the inspections regardless of us just doing it in line with the FSA or doing all of it. We require significant resource addition into the team to be able to meet it.
And just to add to that, Councillor, I think when we bought this report last year, I think we identified a number of factors which may, and in effect, when I came with Joe to this meeting last year, we identified we are right on the cusp of delivering that statutory workload, but obviously there's lots of unknown factors, including things like the winter shutdown that eventually took place last year around Christmas and the additional work around the Omicron work that we had to do in enforcement. A number of other kind of things came to pass, including significant levels of non-compliance post-pandemic, and some of that is down to just, businesses not being able to keep up with some of that work, but also, in circumstances and a climate whereby, people are pressed, margins are fine, people are looking to try and, keep their, heads above water, I suppose. There is an incentive in some circumstances for businesses to cut corners. And we have seen an increase in non-compliance since we got back into the full inspection regime post-COVID, and some of that stuff's featured in that video. So I suppose the perspective is last year's report over the 2 years was we are very finely poised. Since then, some of the factors that we identified as risks have come to pass. We have identified and been given additional permission to overspend this year to accommodate that. But also I'm working at present with the new strategic director to look at what the long-term plans of the service and how we resource it is, because the demand continues to increase. Ealing is one of the most complex food landscapes in the UK. Like, for example, we've got 3 times as many approved premises as Hounslow, Harrow and Hillingdon combined. So we have a lot more manufacturers, a lot more big business, as well as a really quite buoyant kind of local retail food space as well. And those 2 things combined means that Ealing has additional challenges. And so effectively what we're saying to you tonight is it's pretty finely balanced. We have an approval to overspend, and Isabella is confident and has given myself reassurance, and Councillor Mahfouz as the portfolio holder reassurance that we should meet the requirements of the Food Standards Agency, but that is delivering the minimum level of required inspections that we're able to. So there is kind of additionality or extra work or more proactive work that we could do that we are not able to do with the current workload, and significantly the amount of enforcement the team's having to undertake. There is a slide in that presentation, which is also in your report, which demonstrates the increase in enforcement we've taken this year in response to that increased level of non-compliance we've seen. And obviously, wherever you take enforcement, it's more work. You have to do witness statements, you have to prepare stuff for court. A very clean 5-star premises is the lowest contact and amount of work that we need to have. So where we have premises that, for example, pre-pandemic were maybe a 4-star, they might have had an inspection every year or 18 months. If we go and inspect that and it's a 0 or a 1, that inspection comes forward to 6 monthly. So the more non-compliance we see, our workload increases because the frequency of premises needing to be inspected increases as well, which means that when you get into a space where non-compliance is more prevalent, your workload becomes more active. Not only are you doing more enforcement, you have to inspect those premises more because they're higher risk. And so that gives you a kind of impression of how the workload is coming at the team at the moment.
Got a few questions here. Luckily, we've got 16 the chair of the scrutiny. Marks up it's got a lovely if you want to go, I mean, and then yes, sorry. I'm just saying, we've got the chair of overview and scrutiny there, sitting in front of us, and he might want to have a look at this in another way. I think the first question was on over here. Yes, is Councillor Baines?
Yes, thank you. I just want to say thank you for the detailed report. One of my questions was, I know there was a recruitment process problem within the team that you need more officers to help so that you can carry out enforcement because of the huge increase in restaurant. How would you go about now making sure that these positions are filled so that we have those officers coming in? And also you said that the staff you do have now, only 70% of them, they still need to be additionally supervised. Are the officers going to, what kind of roles are they going to undertake? Are they still going to have to supervise, or are you going to have another team going out to actually look at the restaurants? How will you manage that in your 2-year plan? Thank you.
So we've moved away from the 2-year plan. At the moment, we're only focusing to meet the FSA expectations, which is by the end of March 2023. And the plan is to get another 5 extra contractors. And whilst we will have to pay very heavily for that, we can get them, but that's the kind of very high discrepancy between what we're paying our officers and what the contractors are asking. So providing we do pay the fee, we will be able to get them in. But again, just getting contractors wouldn't be viable for the foreseeable future for a number of reasons.
Was next.
Does any of your work generate income, for example, the export health certificates?
Yes, yeah. So we do a range of work that generates income. Part of it is the export health certificates, which again in the report I've highlighted that it's gone up. However, it's normally only a recovery cost because obviously we have to spend the resources to issue those certificates in the first place. And again, another part of the generating income is doing re-inspections. Premises have to pay for it, but again, we are only recovering part of it. So to answer your question, we don't generate income, but we are able to get some of the income back into the pot.
Is that a statutory requirement that you only cover your costs? Because with export health certificates, that can be done commercially, can't it?
In what way? Sorry, commercially. We issue it. We can choose whether we want to issue them or not. And at the moment, obviously, we are issuing them and we are recovering the costs that we incurred in progressing those health certificates. And that's what local authorities
I assume it's for food exports abroad. Yes.
Yeah.
Presumably the businesses can either go to you or to a private officer to issue the certificate.
It depends on the type of the products. We can only issue certificates for products of non-animal origin. So these are kind of lower risk sweets and heavily processed foods. But you're right, they can go to different bodies which do charge them for those products as well.
So I suppose I understand the rationale of that question. I suppose for me at this point, we would have to devote resource away from statutorily inspecting the businesses we need to inspect to do that work. And just touching back on the previous question, the demand for food inspection officers is massive. This is why the rates of contractors are so high, and it's very competitive. So all London boroughs compete against each other to secure additional resource and contractors, particularly towards the end of the year where your inspection workload needs to be delivered in the run up to the end of March. So, you know, if we were to take staff and do additional work around export and go out, because we would have to put time and effort into pitching this and going and finding the work, in effect, to sell, as you would suggest, we would be taking officers who would be doing statutory inspections, which we're struggling to deliver, to do that work. And similarly, trying to backfill them with contractors would be a bit of a nil-sum game, because we would pay more for the contractors to come in and do the work that isn't being done to deliver that. So in terms of trying to turn that into a profit to contribute to the service, I think that would require significant investment and work and time, which the team doesn't really have at the moment, on the basis that we are working officers and managers and team leaders are undertaking inspections constantly to try and meet this criteria, or undertake the enforcement we need to undertake when we find businesses like that are putting Ealing residents' health at risk. So I think there's potential to explore that, but I think we need to be in a space where we have a settled and relatively, appropriate level of staff to then think about that additionality, I suppose, is what I would say.
And just if I can add to it, at the moment, the expert health certificates that we issue them for any request that we get. There isn't any more that we could issue at this stage without getting an expert who would be pretty much a vet to issue a specialistic type of health certificates, which we don't issue at the moment in-house. But again, as Jess said, this would cost us a lot of money and probably wouldn't bring a lot of income into the team regardless of that.
Councillor Gordon and then Councillor.
It's the staffing question I was interested in, so I think I'm clear.
Councillor Kingston.
Yeah, I just want to know, do you have any guidance on what's the possible effects of the Strep A? What's going to happen, whether you're expecting a deluge of work?
So we do cover some of the public health work, but that wouldn't come within us. That would be a public health function. We normally sit on some of the panels when we assist them, but it wouldn't be something that we'd be able to comment on, I'm afraid.
Maybe, I'm not sure how they're going to do it this year, but I think your department are going to have to make a bid for more money from within. Perhaps they maybe need to take money from somewhere else, move it across to an area that's perhaps less used, I don't know, so that you can get more officers, because that's obviously what you need.
So in terms of this year, there was a conversation around a food recovery plan, but as you'll be aware, there's been a change in the leadership in our area. We have a new strategic director, and in conversation with him, we've agreed to go away and have a look at the wider structures next year and look at budgets and try and undertake that piece of work more broadly with everything that now sits within his basket. Obviously, the directorates have changed in terms of who has what and where. So for what happens in 2023-24, that's something that we're looking at and working on now. I suppose at this point, the focus of Isabella and the team is very much on the work and inspection load for this year and having that delivered by the end of March so that we meet the requirements of the Food Standards Agency and we can give assurance around food safety for the residents of Ealing and to the FSA. What we bring forward next year, I'm having conversations with him about, and some of that will mean that we need to allocate more resource in around overall numbers, but also look at the recompense of officers working in this field. Ealing pays very low amounts of wage around food safety in comparison with neighbouring boroughs, and in particular in relation to more central London boroughs. But even with our nearby neighbours, we pay a good few grand less than others. So there's something around competitiveness as well as the overarching kind of retainment. The team have been very good at taking newly qualified officers and bringing them through and training them. And to be fair, Ealing has a lot to offer to graduate EHOs in that, because of the complexity of our food work and the kind of number of approved premises, as well as the retail settings and other aspects, mean that they learn very quickly in Ealing and get exposed to a lot of more complex work. But obviously that creates a supervisory kind of load for the managers. So we're very good at training and bringing on officers, But when they get well established and, you know, become more experienced, they are in very high demand from other boroughs as well as the private sector going into contracting and other things like that, and being able to demonstrate the breadth of work they can do from an Ealing perspective means that they become quite highly sought after in the marketplace, which has its own challenges, or victim of our own success somewhat.
Executive director, he actually was responsible for Borough Market, wasn't he? So he probably knows a lot about food outlets and so on, because he went there after he left Ealing.
He did. He also ran a food service in East London for a time, so he's quite well sighted on what we do.
Are there any other questions, Councillor Young?
In the report, you mentioned your Ben Coulton speed awareness courses, your rehab courses. They're currently suspended. Are the plans to reintroduce those during the next financial year?
At the moment, there's no plans due to a number of reasons. One of it is obviously lack of resources. And the predominant reason why we're not running it at the moment is the University of West London. The person that was doing it for us, they've resigned, and there isn't anyone at the moment in that organization that would like to pick it up with us again. So there is plans to reinstate it, but it's not in this financial year. Yes, till the 2023. In the next year, we will look into it.
We need to have an agreement with them about someone to lead that piece of work on their side, because obviously as the enforcing agency, we can't then take that function on. And that's why that approach worked well previously, because they provided the training and supportive aspect once we made the referral as an alternative to a legal outcome, I suppose. So the concept is a good one, I think, and it also gives an alternative to premises who score low levels of compliance, but not necessarily at such a high risk level that we are prioritizing for enforcement. So there's in between, I suppose. They give that alternative to a prosecution and allow people to try and take a more education-based approach to making their business safer. And some of it has also helped, I suppose, in the context of food platforms and things like that that are now probably better in terms of requiring, you know, businesses to reach a certain standard around food hygiene. So it is something that we want to continue, but we need the resource our side and a little bit of spare time to do that work with them, and they need somebody who's competent their side to lead that piece of work for them.
And the reason why I'm saying as well this year, and we're looking to it next year, is because we need to see what the FSA will decide on the new food delivery program. So obviously, hopefully very soon we'll have more information about what they want us to do. And hopefully there will be more flexibility. So rather than doing perhaps inspections as frequently as we do at the moment, we would be able to offer courses like that instead. But again, without having that detail at this stage, we wouldn't be able to answer your question fully.
Any more questions from the panel? Group? No. Well, look at the recommendations then. And I imagine before we do that, are you intending to come back this time next year?
So the process would be an annual report. So on the basis that this was a 2-year report as directed by the FSA, we would come back next year. And in that, we would report on the new service provision, whatever the new structural arrangements are. As Isabella pointed out, the FSA are reviewing the requirements and what they want to expect. And I think they are in a space now where they recognize there are some very good businesses out there who probably don't need as much regulation as perhaps they're having. But also allowing councils more space and time to focus on the businesses that do. And so once we get that steer from them, I think we anticipate that will be in around the March, April time of this year. So part of our thinking around the next year's approach and how we resource the service is having a look to see the direction of travel from the FSA and what their expectations are of us before we kind of effectively go out and nail our colours to the mast in terms of a new service structure or provision or model. So that's kind of where we're at with it at this stage. But we would always bring back this report either as a full report or an update report, depending on the timeframes. It's a statutory requirement.
If we look at page 8, or if you're all online, recommendations. So we note the legal framework, we note the implementations of food service plan, agree to that, approve the service response and action plan, agreed, note the additional resources allocation, and note the improved new health and safety plan. Yes, noted. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for a very, very full report. I did go through it this afternoon. I'm sure we all did. But thank you for that. And thank you for coming to answer the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.